My name is Oisin Redmond, and this is my partner in this project, Aidan McNeill, and we work together on the project called Experience versus Learning. Should theory test renewal be mandatory?
So as Oisin just said, our project is on whether or not theory test renewal should be mandatory. The theory test was introduced into Ireland in 2001, and many drivers on the road are of the age of 40 or above, which means they've most likely never taken the theory test. Since 2001, there have been 12 road traffic acts and amendments added. Before we gathered our research, we hypothesized that driving experience does not trump learning. To gather our research, we created two anonymous online forms, and one of them was a driving habits survey, and the other was a mock driver theory test based on the actual theory test app. 62 people participated in the driving habits survey, and 101 people took part in the theory test. There was no revision allowed before the theory test. There was 40 questions from the theory test itself, and the passing mark was 35 out of 40 marks, just like the actual theory test. And now Oisin's going to go on and go through the results and the conclusions with you.
As Aidan was saying, we had two forms, the driving habits survey and the mock theory test. For the driving habits survey, we had 62 respondents. 98% of those respondents, or 61 of the 62, said that they would consider themselves a safe driver. However, when we broke it down into questions, we had 90% would unnecessarily go through an amber light. We had 87% would not stop driving even if they were fatigued. And 33% would describe themselves as aggressive drivers. This showed us a gap between how safe drivers think they are versus the reality of their actions. We put this down to them not knowing the consequences of these actions, and also not having enough awareness of the fact that these are just not encouraged. For the actual theory test, we had 101 respondents. 46.5% of these respondents failed to achieve the official passing grade of 35 of 40 questions answered correctly. The 55 plus age group answered best of all of the age groups. We put this down to them not having done a theory test in the past, so they have been constantly updating their knowledge. But currently, the people who have sat it are taking the knowledge that they learned at the time of their theory test and taking that as it will last for the entirety of their driving life. So, males scored slightly higher with 88.75% compared to females, but we put this down to sample size rather than anything to do with gender. So we used inferential statistics, which allow us to put our percentage that we found upon the whole population. There are currently 3.6 million drivers licensed in Ireland. Approximately 1.98% of those would fail the theory test if they were to say today, according to our calculations. So for our conclusions, we found that most drivers would fail the theory test that half the drivers would fail the theory test if they were to sit today, and that most drivers engage in risky behaviours but may not be aware of why they should not be doing this and the consequences of doing this. Based off these conclusions, we created some recommendations which would help improve this. Originally, we proposed the use of a mandatory theory test, which would encourage people to have to renew their knowledge and keep up to date. We proposed a timeline of every 10 years. However, after hearing insights, we have decided that a voluntary theory test may be more effective, with a reward of possibly 5% or 10% off your insurance premium as a reward for passing. We also found that an increase in the number of campaigns against bad driving habits and some publishing of the stats associated with them would help discourage drivers from engaging in them and would help improve overall road safety.